Hello and welcome to Home Life for Extraordinary Impact. My name is Matt Barrios. I get to be your host. I am a husband, dad, researcher, writer, and coach based in San Francisco, California. I am doing this project as part of a larger project called Home Life Design Lab. I'll tell you more about that at the end of the episode. But the goal of this podcast is to interview people around the world to get global perspectives on home from experts and everyday folks in order to help you who are listening, do those things that will help transform the quality of your own home life, help it be a place of growth, connection, and setting you up to be able to bring your best to the world and make your greatest impact. So that's what we're after on this, and I get to interview awesome people all around the world. And I am so excited today to get to interview Kate, and Kate is currently calling me from Sussex, England. And I'm so excited to talk with you because part of what's inspiring this project too is the idea of applying, human-centered design, UX design principles to considering home. And I know that's part of your expertise, right? Is UX design and coaching UX designers. So, as much as we can throughout this interview, I'd love to tap into that expertise as you think about your home. But one of the first questions I always love to ask people when we begin these interviews is, what are the things that you do at your home that help you really show up as your best in your life?
Nice. Oh, thanks. I love that intro. It's so powerful, isn't it, our home? Um, I I will answer your question, but I just remembered a little vision in my garden. So we had this rusty filing cabinet, and we found it at this old junk store, and it just had this character, and we had no idea what we were going to use it for. And it's just been sitting in our garden. And yesterday I saw this bird fly into the second drawer, and I was curious. I was like, what's that bird doing in there? And I opened the drawer and I found this beautiful little nest and six little baby chicks. And
Wow.
I think they were blue tits, and they were all squeaking and making noises. And I looked at that and I was like, that is how I feel about my house. I feel like
Love.
this little snug thing curled up inside this tiny space. And I feel safe and I feel held, you know? And
Hmm.
so I guess that's comes where my idea of home comes from. They were on the second floor, so they were in I live on the ground floor in my house.
Yeah.
But for me, it's all about feeling snug and safe and held. So some of the
Ah.
things that I do, I guess, are like around incense lighting and blankets and things that are suspended that allow you to do this. All those motions and senses, things that are very sense based, they make me feel very safe and home and
Oh, I
grounded.
love that. That's so wonderful. And what a picture of from your garden. How beautiful to get to have that experience. It seems like you're an avid gardener. Would you tell me about like the role of the garden in your I don't know, just your life, your home, your way of being at home?
I am not going to pretend that I am a gardening genius.
Sure.
I am interested to become one. I'd love to learn. At the moment, I'm just bought a book on herbs. I'd love to be able to, grow certain herbs and be more medicinally inclined. My husband is Persian, and whenever I speak to any of his Persian girlfriends, they are basically an apothecary of knowledge. They're
Wow.
amazing, and they have so much hand-me-down knowledge within their family. And so I would love to be a vessel for that knowledge, and I'd love to soak it up. But I must say, Matt, at the moment, the vegetable patch is not looking great. Full of thistles,
Sure.
it's a mess.
Ah.
It's not looking good. So the project maybe this summer is to tidy it up, and then maybe next summer we'll have some vegetables. That would be great.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. But I mean, I feel like to even like want to be like a garden person, says a little something about the kind of person that you are, connected perhaps to nature, a desire to watch things grow and nurture them, and all of that. And I just think that's really cool. Even the sort of delight that you got in seeing these birds and their bird's nest, and the
They're so
symbolism even of that
curious, aren't
moment, so
they?
beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. I think we think that we know so much about the world, and then you stand for 2 seconds and you stare at something in the eyes, or, whether it's a carrot or whether it's these birds, and you think,
Yeah.
how on earth, that's magic. How did
Uh-huh.
that come to be? So I think it gives me a lot of awe, it makes me feel inspired. And I think, especially with my job, that's quite important
Hmm.
because I think designers and anyone in tech generally can get quite jaded and quite
Yeah.
cynical, and they kind of fold your arms and be like, oh yeah, whatever. And then when you
Yeah.
go into the garden, it just brings that childlike awe back
Uh,
because it's just
yeah.
magical. It's just a mystery.
Absolutely. Keep that imagination, ticking, which helps you do far better creative work as well, I imagine, versus the feeling of just pushing pixels around a screen, like a sense of a charge of meaning, perhaps, with it all. Yeah. So, we're naturally going there. So I'm very curious about if there's any links that you notice between your work in design and your life at home. What kind of things do you see connected?
Yeah. I think most people would assume that because I'm a designer, I have a beautifully laid out home that could be, perfectly exported from Pinterest. And I think I take more of a kind of iterative, agile, scrappy approach.
Hmm.
And, something that's really important to me in my coaching methodology is, I help product designers to take that lean loop or that agile approach that they use in their software design. And I help them to use that experimental mindset in the design of their life, in the design of their career. So I also apply that to my life. And it means that everything is about imperfect progress. Everything is coming from this place of compassion. And we're constantly experimenting. So in my home, I might have a question. And as a designer in a software, it might be, I wonder, what is my hypothesis about this particular feature? What value do I imagine it will bring to what type of users? And how will I measure that success?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
how will I incrementally grow that? And how can I validate that with statistical significance? Right?
yeah. Sure.
So with my home, I can't do that.
Yeah, yeah,
A
yeah.
lot more qualitative than
Absolutely.
quantitative.
Yep. Yep.
And there's no such thing as statistical significance here.
Yeah.
It's much more about gut and intuition, but I can still do experiments. So I can
Yeah,
see
I
what
want to hear about experiments with home. What a
right.
fascinating idea. Tell me more.
Now, I'm sure that there are loads of professions that already do this, but I just think I've kind of really pulled out the methodology part because I'm a designer and I like frameworks.
Yeah.
So in the lean loop, when you're building software, you have build or learn, build, measure, learn, build, measure, learn, build, measure. And you constantly do this loop, and they call this continuous discovery, right? Because you don't stop learning about people. You always stay curious, and that essentially reduces risks, and it reduces the likelihood of you coding something that no one cares about and costing loads of money and engineering time and
Hmm.
people's wasted energy doing something that, no one cares about.
Yeah.
And I think for us, it's really curious that we can do continuous self discovery. And we can
Hmm.
continually be learning about ourselves and doing user research on ourselves
Hmm.
and empathizing with ourselves and looking at our needs and what we need from our space and what we need in different times of the day and what do we need with different types of people and different types of gathering and how do those needs shift as our intention shifts. And so
Yeah.
becoming a user researcher and watching all of that provides a really rich space to start designing your home from.
Wow. I love it. Oh my gosh. Kate, I mean, you and I are on the same wavelength with like the idea of being able to bring some of this stuff, user research, human centered design, like to your home, right? Like, so I love that you also think about that, and I want to learn from you about like your angle on that, your model, your method. So, what's an example maybe of an experiment, applied in your life, applied in your home that you might do?
Yeah. I've got one that might hopefully is broad enough, relatable to everyone. During the lockdown, people couldn't travel to and from work. They didn't have their normal journey, right? And that commute, for some people initially might have been a huge blessing because they're like, oh, brilliant, I'm not stuck in traffic, or, I don't have to be on the smelly subway or something like that. But for others, it was really sad because they miss cycling or they miss a beautiful walk or something.
Yes.
And I think no matter which side of the fence you fell on, everybody after about a year or less started to notice that that time of commute was not just a commute. It was
Right.
also a decompression time. It was like
Yeah.
a reorientation. It was, I'm leaving my work and I'm now coming home.
Yes. Yes.
And that
Yes.
allows you to really change gears.
Mm-hmm.
And for me personally, it was really important because in my job, I am often operating in a very charged, decisive, action driven kind of male, kind of masculine energy, which is very kind of I'm doing, I'm going, I'm acting,
Sure.
I'm defending, protecting, like very, very like high stakes, high pressure.
Yeah.
And then when I come home, I want to go into my other energy
Yeah.
and I want to be being and receiving and I want to be more creative and I want to be more expansive and open and not
Mm-hmm.
really doing, just being.
Yeah.
It's really difficult to do. Like it's just like trying to suddenly change clothes in 2 seconds. It's really hard.
Right. Right.
And so I was like, okay, I need to do an experiment. What can I do in my home to design this transition? How can I
Mm-hmm.
create this transition?
I
Right?
love it. I
So
love
my
it.
brain's like exploding with ideas. I'm like,
Yes. Yes.
okay, Kate, let's try. The first hypothesis is that you just need to walk it off. Okay. So I was like, okay, I'm going to walk it off. So after I ended work, I was like, I'm just going to do a little lap, you know? So I just do a little lap around, and I'm lucky enough to have a garden. So I do a little lap around the pond.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, that's going to be good. And then I'd come back home and I'd re-enter the house. I'd look around, I'm like, no, I haven't shaken it off. It's really not
Yeah.
working.
Yeah. Yeah. You check in with yourself, that measurement moment
Yeah,
of like, okay, actually, I'm still in the same energy. It hasn't
yeah,
worked. Yeah.
exactly. And if we go technical, the goal is be how can I wind down within the same time, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
less, because that's the goal.
Cool.
And so then I tried, okay, well, I'm going to change clothes. Maybe I need to change clothes. So I'm going to go home, I'm going to change my outfit. And maybe if I put
Uh-huh.
on something snuggly, then that whole. And this was slightly better because having a shower was really helpful, right? In
Yeah.
cleansing my mood and that normally took a bit longer as well. So I
Sure.
was like, okay, this is improvement. The next experiment was to change the types of conversations I had, right? So
Mm.
immediately after work, I had to involve some props then. I had to make sure that I unwound this blind that I have in my home that's like a divider, it separates, and change the space so it's now expansive. So something physically in the space has opened up,
Mm-hmm.
metaphorically, like I'm opening up,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and so that really helped as well because it was almost like a ritual, the act of opening up the space was my way of
Mm-hmm.
telling my body. And as I won't go into all the details, but essentially the learning or the insight was that I needed to do something physically to unlock something mentally, and it had to
Yes.
be to do with the space. Otherwise, it was too conceptual. It couldn't be
Yeah.
cerebral. It had to be bodily felt, and that was my learning.
Yes. Yes, yes, and I love the idea also of the alteration of the space being a part of it because it's not only oh I can go be in a different environment or something like that, but it's also like oh this work environment that I was in, I actually needed to change that so it transforms the space itself into a
Yes.
different kind of space to inhabit, and oh, that's so interesting to me. It's I could go on and on about this. I remember back like height of pandemic lockdown, I was all about maintaining my bike commute. So I would go at that time. I was like in a kind of suburban town in California, visiting my parents, staying with them, with my wife and stuff. And I would go do a big loop bike ride at the start and end of my day, and it was the perfect thing for me to get in that. But everybody's got to figure out their thing that's going to work for them, especially in a more work from home world. So I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, so now I want to ask you too a little bit about like because most likely you haven't lived in the same place all of your life or something like that, in the same exact home environment or whatever. What are the different places that you have called home over the years?
I lived in a very old Victorian house for most of my childhood in Wimbledon. It had like 3 floors and it was very spacious, but quite tall, but quite narrow, and it had lots of character, and the age was really evident. And then when I went out as a teenager into London, and well, not a teenager, as a young adult out into London, it was funny that I wanted to inhabit similar spaces. So I always looked for houses that had that kind of character.
Yeah.
And then when I had a personality shift and I wanted to be completely different, it was interesting that I then was looking for modern, clean, white space flats that were just an empty box and you could do whatever you wanted with them.
Yeah.
So I think my home has always served the mind. It's been an extension of my mind. It's always served whatever I'm wishing to explore. And now I live on a farm. So I left tech for a few years and started a woodworking business with my husband. And he's like a master woodworker. He's an amazing artist. He's a sculptor.
Wow.
And I was his assistant, and I was learning how to do sanding and oiling, and I was learning all about trees and how they worked with each other. And that was also very reflective of my desire. I really wanted to learn how to slow down and how to find balance and to be more connected with myself. And so I think the home was reflecting that intention.
I love it. And different seasons of life, different moments in the development of your character reflected in the environment that you wanted to put yourself in. And it almost, makes me wonder which happened first. Was it like, oh, I need to be in this new environment and because I sense something's different, or this new environment is unlocking something different within me?
Yeah. I think the most recent one with the green, I think I didn't do that intentionally. I think it happened afterwards. Whereas I think the big splash into the city, learning about venture capital and money and how to be a baller and a badass, I think that was very intentional.
Totally. Yeah, let me get like the slick flat to represent this is who I'm stepping into. Yeah. I love it. That's so cool. Now I know one of the things that we've been discussing so far has a lot to do with space and kind of like the environment. But I think there's also like how we spend time in our homes. That's really important. So I'm curious, what are maybe the daily, weekly, monthly kind of rhythms of life that you keep that help you, stay Kate?
Yeah. I think of how I spend time in kind of modules. I think quite in a modular way. So sometimes, and I switch kind of, there's almost like an axis. So one is, I think, in terms of the time of day. So morning, breakfast, work time, evening time, rest time, that kind of thing, bedtime, which I think a lot of people do. And then the other one is more my way of being. I think, how do I spend my time in terms of thinking, reflecting, being generative and creative, being in focused time, or relaxing or intimate time. So I think all of those different ways of being also affect how I use the space. So I don't know, where should we go? There's lots of different ways of thinking.
Yeah, that is interesting. Maybe we could start with kind of like your morning. What is like a really great morning in your life looking like that helps set you up for the rest of the day?
Okay. So for me, it's all about not feeling rushed. I think before I used to wake up with my alarm and the first thing I did was looked at my phone, and I could hear the voices of the news, of these messages, and there was no connection to self. And so something really important to me is I want the first voice I hear to be nature, so a bird or some sunlight, just something from the planet. And then I want it to be my own thoughts. And then the day kind of goes more smoothly somehow. I feel more in my own rhythm. And I won't go on about it, but I have like a coffee ritual and I have a smoothie ritual
Sure.
and whatever. So who doesn't?
I love it.
But I think, yeah, I think there's something about holding that as sacred that's quite important to me.
Yeah.
And I do meditation, and if I don't do it, I've learned to be flexible and not worried and concerned. Oh no, I
Yeah.
haven't done my meditation, therefore my day is going to go terribly,
Right,
which
right,
can
right.
also happen when people get too
Yeah.
obsessed with optimizing their time.
Yes.
So I would say that a good day for me is where I'm intentionally being connected to myself, but I'm also flowing. I'm fluid. I'm not being too critical, too judgmental about it. I'm just rolling with it. Yeah.
Yes.
Does that make
Yes.
sense?
That makes a ton of sense. And it really does feel like uh, it's encapsulated in that like first morning little blip of tune into nature, tune into your internal voice, kind of let those be connected in some way. And then it sets up this flow of, oh, now I kind of roll with it. And yeah, that sounds really, really helpful. I think you're also putting your finger on something that I think a lot of us have felt, which is the over optimization of life and the, I don't know, the habit trackingification of everything, and it sounds refreshing to have a little bit more of the internal rhythm that leads the dance, or the natural rhythm that leads the dance, versus, I don't know, I don't know, these other external things.
I think
Yeah.
that's key. External. It's external. If it's genuinely internal, and you are being led by it and you really want it and it feels you and it feels balanced, then I think that's right for you. But if it really does feel like a I should, I must, I ought, I have to do this thing that everyone else is doing, I have to get up at 4 a.m. because Tim Ferriss has said so, like
Yeah.
then it's really external. It's not coming from what's serving you internally. So I think I've believed that I need to trust myself. And things go really well when I actually trust myself. As soon as
Yeah.
I start doubting myself and letting all these other thoughts come in, that's when it all goes, wacky.
Absolutely. When did that lesson become clear for you of shifting from this self doubt, externally motivated, to this more intrinsically motivated, in tune with yourself thing? What was that process like for you?
I think I can vaguely orientate it, but I might have to think out loud a bit with you.
Yeah.
So the vague orientation is for 100% when I met my husband. So he is a beautiful dutar player, which is this Persian instrument with two strings. It's a
Well.
very rare instrument, and he plays it fantastically. But the story behind this instrument is that the player of this instrument, is the listener, and they are receiving the music from the person paying attention. So the quality of the music is the quality of the attention of the listener.
Well.
And together they are creating music and they are creating love. And so it was very important when we were dating early on, therefore, that I paid a lot of attention when he was playing,
Yep.
because otherwise the music was going to be bad and that was going to be my fault, right? I was really attentive. I was like, I'm so present. I'm so present. I'm loving this.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And this really taught me by watching him how to be so grounded and so in yourself and just really wrapped up enjoying that bliss. And this was something quite foreign to me because as a people pleaser or as a very attentive, self-conscious person, I focused most of my attention outside and what other people were thinking.
Yeah.
And so this idea was very novel, the idea of completely going inside and experiencing that, and not forever, but just to see what that would feel like, was really helpful. And I think that was a bit of a catalyst to allow me to actually say, hey, this internal thing is actually quite great, and I
Yeah.
can control how much time I spend in here. And as a coach, that whole inner work is
Yes.
really powerful.
Absolutely. In some ways, it is the unlock, of so many things, the mental game of everything that is going on, and yeah, that's beautiful. And the dotar is the thing that set the tone for this whole internal journey for you.
Yeah, I think it inspired me. It really, and I think maybe all of us have seen that because when you see a dancer just totally lost in the moment, right? Or you see a jazz player, or you see,
Yes,
I don't know, even a swimmer, someone that's so in flow state, it is inspiring, and you're just like, yeah, I want to be with them, And so I think
absolutely.
that definitely took me on my way to learning how do I get into flow? How do I trigger it? How do I learn what my triggers are? And that's also something that I teach on my course is designers need to learn what triggers flow and what breaks their flow because it's just the most yummy feeling ever.
Oh, totally, totally. Yeah. The ability to lose hours in the moment, kind of so present to your work or so present to an interaction or something is such a beautiful thing to get to tap into from time to time. And all the better if, because what I'm hearing is like you also help people be intentional, purposeful in
Yeah.
getting to that. What kind of things I don't know, do you encourage people to do or ask people about in order to help them identify what helps them get into flow?
I think the number one practice, like baseline, is just learning how to listen to your thoughts. So that could be through walking and talking on your voice notes, or it could be through writing and journaling, or it could be talking out loud with someone. So I don't think there's a right way to do it.
Yeah.
But I think if you can learn how to become more reflexive and create some kind of reflexive practice, then you're going to increase everything in your life. You're going to increase your self-awareness. You're going to increase your peace of mind. You're going to increase your communication and EQ and soft skills. And
Yeah.
you're going to increase your balance and your harmony and basically your happiness. So I start there and then we work into more specifics for each person that's different.
That's lovely. That sounds amazing. You want to play with me on this idea? Now, thinking about that applied to home, what comes to mind? Like, this sort of setting up home for flow, setting up home as a reflexive environment. What comes to mind as we think about that?
Well, I did my experiments, right?
Yes.
So I wanted to practice grounding in between conversations. So any other people that work with humans in the room? Anyone listening? Yeah, right. We all work with humans, right?
Yes,
So
yes.
sometimes you're in a really heavy conversation with someone. Sometimes work gets tough, or maybe sometimes you just really empathize with someone who's suffering, right? And sometimes you gotta shake that off. You gotta recenter and not absorb
Yes.
it all. And so I was doing that a lot as a coach. That's something that I encounter. And, I've been doing coaching for 3 or 4 years, so I'm pretty new, right, compared to coaches that have been around for 20 more years or
Sure,
so.
sure. Yeah.
And so I'm still learning what that boundary looks like to make sure that I don't take on someone else's emotions. And I was exploring with my home how different scents or smells or bottles could be placed, and how I could use toilet breaks essentially to
Yeah.
do that kind of reset.
Ah,
And I
yeah.
also experiment with my chair. So I don't know if you can see, but I've actually got a really cool chair.
Oh, yeah.
Um, it's got a
Oh,
crazy
so cool.
back and
Whoa.
it moves pretty much in every direction.
Yeah.
I can share with
Let
you the
me
link.
yeah, yeah. Just to briefly describe it for people who are in the listening mode versus the watching mode on Spotify or YouTube. Yeah,
It's,
it's just like this really beautiful kind of modern looking chair with a very unique back that's almost like a T shaped, and like the way the legs fall on, if you're sitting on it, looks like it kind of. I don't know. It just sets you up and a footrest and everything. Gosh, wow, it's so cool. I don't know if that really gave full justice to it, the
Basically,
description.
everything moves. Okay, so it's
Okay.
really optimizing for movement. And
Ah,
anyone that's into energy or into kind of holistic health will know that we need to move. We need to. How
yeah.
about you see a little Bambi in the road, like a little deer. If it gets hit or a dog gets hit by a car, the first thing it does, It
It
shakes, right?
shakes.
Because
Yeah.
that's how you get rid of trauma, right? That's you literally physically
Yeah. Yes.
you gotta get it out, and you see that in nature. You see birds when they've got too much rain on them, they just shake it off, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
anything, I was experimenting with promoting more movement because I would get a bit rigid like this,
Yes.
locked
Yes.
on my computer. And
Right.
this was a successful experiment because it really helps me to change my mood and change my. I can sit on it 4 different ways.
Oh my goodness. Yes. I love it. Yeah, because like you can drape your arms in this way or that way, and move your legs in this way or that way, spin it all the way around, whatever it takes. Like, I love it. Gosh, I might need to look into a chair like that. Okay, so we've been having an awesome conversation that's kind of gone in directions that I wouldn't have anticipated, but that's part of the joy of this project for me is like just getting into unique or interesting things. But we are going to need to wrap it up a little bit. So, in light of your kind of like own personal thoughts on home and even perhaps coming from this interview as well, what are some of the things that you might encourage people who are listening to put into practice or explore to help transform the quality of life for their homes?
Yeah. Without sounding like I'm repeating myself, I would definitely ask people to really consider what are my needs when I come home? What are my needs in the morning?
Mm-hmm.
And how can I experiment with different ways to achieve it? And if it doesn't happen the first time, that's okay. Try again. Keep trying, and keep being creative. Keep changing, and do it regularly. Because often in homes, especially, is we get stuck in a certain way of being, and this
Yes.
causes lots of frustration. But if we have a mindset of regularly trying things, and I'm not talking about like redecorating your whole house every week,
Right, right, right. Totally.
very little baby steps,
Yes.
very small adjustments. If you get into the habit of making really small adjustments regularly, then over time, you can make a really big difference in your life and you can completely transform it in a way that feels a little bit light and a little bit effortless. So I would
Hmm.
definitely encourage people to adopt that kind of small baby step, incremental change with their home, just like you might with your habits or with your mental health.
I love it. I love it. And I think this is definitely like striking a chord with me because I think it's so valuable for us to realize like the home is kind of the foundation of a lot of our lives. And if our home's not going well, it seems like life isn't going well. And so to be able to identify what are the needs that might be missed in that moment, the needs that might be longed for, and then start setting things up in order to meet those needs in small ways at first. I love it. That's wonderful. So, Kate, what sort of things are you working on these days, and how can people get in touch with you if they want to hear more?
Sure. I have a coaching program called Reality Prototyping. So, literally, instead of prototyping software, we're prototyping our life, reality.
Yeah.
And I can share a link with you and your listeners to offer them a discount if they're interested. If they're a creative or if they're in the creative industry, they're more than welcome to reach out to me.
Fantastic. Well, I'll make sure to include that. I'm going to bring everything that Kate offered in this. She also wrote some stuff for me that I'm going to put onto an accompanying blog post for this episode. And you can find a link to that in the show notes. It will also include links to her website and so on. So that will be a great way for you to get in touch with her. And we'll definitely connect on figuring out that discount, the coupon as well. So we'll make sure that that is part of that blog post as well. So everybody, thank you for listening. This has been another episode of Home Life for Extraordinary Impact. So fun to talk and go unexpected places on this. This is, as I said, an element of my larger project, Home Life Design Lab, which is on a mission to help 100 million people transform their quality of life at home. It's a big, audacious number because I think when it comes down to it, our quality of life comes down to how our homes are doing. And I want to see people's homes be an incredible place for them where they can feel recharged, where they can feel at peace, where they can be set up to be hospitable and connected to other people. That's what the mission of this project is. If this is striking your fancy, then please check it out at homelifedesignlab.com, where you can sign up for the newsletter to stay tuned about workshops I'm doing and so on. And if you have been listening to this podcast for a while, I urge you to consider becoming a premium subscriber, which will support the ongoing work of this project, as well as unlock some extra special perks for you. So please take a look at that. Links for all of this is in the show notes. So thank you very much for listening. And one final thank you to you, Kate. I really appreciate you coming on. Thank you so much. All right. Until next time, everybody. Thanks for listening to Home Life for Extraordinary Impact. I hope you enjoyed listening as much as I enjoyed putting it together for you. Please take a moment to rate it, like it, and subscribe wherever you have listened or watched. If you really loved it, check the link in the show notes to become a premium subscriber to support the ongoing work of this project and to unlock some exclusive premium episodes. Home Life for Extraordinary Impact is a project of Home Life Design Lab. Find out more at homelifedesignlab.com, where you can sign up for the newsletter and follow along on Instagram and TikTok. Thanks.